on that calm moment, good morning, and thank you for inviting me. Your Pastor Brandy, reached out to Rutgers back in November saying, can someone come talk to us? I'm not sure who you reached out to, whether that department chair or somebody else, but eventually it got to me. I'm like, yeah, I can do that. So, in fact, I just last fall spent the whole semester teaching on essentially this topic. So, are you ready for 15 weeks? My plan today, we have only until 10 o'clock at the very end, is to talk for about 30 minutes. Unfortunately, if I read my speech, it'll take about 12. So we have room for questions. We have room for you to say, oh, what about this and whatever about that? Hey, Joan, how are you? I do see you. Oops, don't you go anywhere. So let me scare you. Can I scare you? Here. Does that scare you at all?
It's every day.
Yeah.
How about this one? So, having told you kind of who I am, let me add to that and say that my great-great-great-grandmother was Lucretia Mott. That name means nothing to you. She was a major Quaker abolitionist and women's rights advocate, the co-convener of the Seneca Falls Women's Rights Convention in 1848. And my mother was raised not Quaker, but using that world view to some extent. And so these two images horrify me largely because the combination of Jesus and violence just seems weird. And yet, those of you who are fans of history might remember World War II. And supposedly, on the USS New Orleans, as the Japanese were bombing, the chaplain on the ship said, praise the Lord and pass the ammunition. Have you all heard that before?
Sure.
In other words, this is not new. This invoking religious imagery, this invoking of the divine, of Jesus as our military power is not new. What is new, probably, I guess, is how it's manifesting today. Possibly. But that's why the topic is really very confusing. What is this thing? And that's why I want to go back to the very beginning, which is black to hide what's coming next, and get rid of that imagery so it doesn't distract you any. I don't think Israelites were terribly happy with Jesus. They were looking, as far as I can tell, for a savior, a Messiah, a guy with a sword. I can't say a guy with a gun, but I could say a guy with a gun, to drive off the Romans, because the Roman oppressors were, as we heard in some of the sermons today, really beating up on the Israelites, on the Jewish people. And Isaiah and the questions about Jesus sound to me like they wanted a military leader to liberate them. That's not who he was. You all know, I suspect, that when he was arrested, I forget who, somebody cut off the ear of the slave of the chief, whatever the topic, I don't remember the name, sorry. And Jesus put it back on. He's like, no, we're not going to do that. Jesus was not to my knowledge, a serious, violent military person. He was not a political person in the sense of seizing political, he was incredibly political, but not seizing political power, if that makes sense. So, and you may not know this, but the early followers of Jesus called themselves the people of the way. And they were pacifists for the most part. They were kibbutzim. Not quite the right word for the time, but it's relevant to refer back to them. And being a Christian was grounds for avoiding the draft way back then. The Romans would say, oh, I'm Christian, sorry. Oh, okay. So that was one appeal of Christianity was getting out of the 20 years of service to the Roman Empire. And then this guy shows up. This guy, I don't like him particularly. This guy, Constantine, he wanted to be emperor. And supposedly, he had a dream, he had a vision. And supposedly, Jesus said, hey,
You okay?
use my imagery. And supposedly he did, and then he won this big battle at whatever it's called bridge. He becomes emperor. In the year 313 in the Common Era. It's a long time ago. And, sorry, 310, he became emperor. And then he stopped the persecution of Christians. 313, he becomes Christian himself, supposedly, and makes Christianity the official religion of the empire, which in my view was a pretty horrible mistake for us Christians. But here we have the fusion of Christian and nationalism for the first time. It was not new. It's not new. We've been struggling with this. That's not the right word. We've been conflicted for 1,700 years. Non-stop. Non-stop. And as I say that, you Lutherans are a big reason why we have a problem.
You're welcome.
Because Martin Luther was not the first Protestant. Jan Hus came before him by about 100 years. But he was the first successful Protestant. But as he did so, he created an alternative political space in Europe. And then Henry VIII did the same thing. And others did also. And so you had 100 years of war, of religious, political, national war, which Luther, Zwingli, the Roman Church, Henry VIII, and the Anglican Church, the Mennonite, they all were part of somehow. And it was ugly, and it was messy, and it was deadly. Most of you know this from some time in your education, don't you? The European wars of religion were, and that's what this country got made of. Because many people fled those wars in the 17th century. The Quakers in Philadelphia, the Dutch were in New York. Having a great time. They allowed the first synagogue in the New World. New Amsterdam was an incredibly diverse, multi-ethnic, multicultural space. And then the English showed up in 1660 something. And the Dutch fled. You know where? To New Jersey. So if you're in New Jersey, you see the Reformed churches. Those are Dutch. The English hated them. They did not get along well. Then you get, how many of you know that Maryland was founded as a Catholic refuge? It lasted about 6 months before the Protestants kicked them out, threw them out. By Protestants, I mean Anglicans for the most part. And how many of you know that Rhode Island was founded as what we call today a Baptist refuge? And that survived. Although many, as I said before we started, fled from there to New Jersey, to Monmouth County, to create the church that I belong to today, because they were afraid of those darned English and those Puritans and the people who think that their fusion of religion and politics is the only right fusion. That's the one to do. Okay, so that's kind of, you missed something?
We were just asking which church in Monmouth do you?
That's before you came in. So the church I belong to is the United Church of Christ. It's the fusion of an early Reformed church and an early Baptist church. The Baptist church founded in 1668, the Reformed church in 1688. They died in 1933 or 4 or 5, and they merged sort of. They merged officially in 1968 and became United Church of Christ, which is what I belong to and what my comma here signifies. We think we're the best church out there, of course. But what I'm saying to you is that the conflict over the meaning of Christ and how we put that into politics is a long-standing source of violence in the world and also in this country. The rest of my talk is based on these two books, plus a few other things here and there. So if you're interested in this topic, I can certainly point you to one of these two books to dig deeper if you would like to. Kevin Cruz is a professor at Princeton. This is a massively important book that he's written about 4 years ago. This book is more recent, so 3 years ago. She's a professor at Calvin College, which is one of the leading evangelical colleges in the country. And this is really inflammatory, this one here about Jesus and John Wayne. I'll cover her more than him, but I'll put them both together for you before we're done today. And let me remind you of something. So close your eyes and take a deep breath, because I'm going to tell you something you guys you know by heart. We hold these truths to be self-evident. You can repeat with me if you want to. That all men are created equal. That they are endowed by the Creator with certain inalienable, blah, 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 blah. But I want to start with that all men are created equal. I want to stop right there, because that is an incredibly unusual thing to say. Especially if we expand it to today's language. That all people are created equal. As my ancestor, she said men and women in the Declaration. That's not who this country has been often. And if you're fans of Heather Cox Richardson, anybody read her? Mm-hmm. This morning's post bangs on this thing really, really hard. In the lead up to the Civil War, Southern whites, the Southern slave owners, were trying very hard to remind us that we are a socially stratified structure with the people who were really rich, the white men, have all the power and those people don't. Abraham Lincoln said, well, wait a minute. Remember those words, that all men are created equal. We're not black and white. We're not rich and poor. We're in this together, because the rich were poor once, especially in this country. And this country was founded on the idea that we're not going to have all these religious differences. We're going to allow them, First Amendment stuff, but we're not going to build and say this is the only one to have. And Lincoln won the war, basically. His ideas won big time. He was murdered. We had a receding of that for a while, but the late 19th century Christianity that dominated this country did so from Lincoln's perspective. An awful lot of our colleges in this country were founded by religious groups to spread the knowledge to freed blacks, to women, to people who've been excluded. An awful lot of the settlement movement, settlement house movement, the progressive era in the 1890s were all trying to say, wait a minute, corporate America, wait a minute, rich people, slow down. These people are the ones who are really, really, really helping us. Abraham Lincoln began the very first government pension system. And then for railway workers, and then after the war for veterans. The progressive era, the 1890s, and then this guy, here's my Catholic plug, this guy, Pope Leo the 13th. Who's Pope right now? Leo does something else, probably the 14th, but Pope Leo the 13th, in 1891, published an encyclical in which he said, hey, capitalism is kind of rotten. Not his words, I'm paraphrasing. Governments need to help the victims of the Industrial Revolution, the workers. You all know the story of the slums of New York. The story, many of you may have read the book, The Jungle, back in high school or college, talking about the meatpacking industry in Chicago and how much it destroyed the human worker in favor of the rich guy who didn't have to lift the fingers. And starting in 1890s and then again 1930s, the government began to bring in 40-hour work weeks, unemployment benefits, minimum wages, retirements, union power. Guess who wasn't happy with that? Come on, shout it out, everybody. Corporate America. The Chamber of Commerce hated this idea. This is where we're getting into this book right here. The Chamber of Commerce said, whoa, 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 wait a minute. But this came out of Pope Leo, the Catholic Pope. The New Deal was a Catholic idea. You know that? This idea of social justice came out of the Catholic Church. And so the Chamber of Commerce said, what do we do? Oh no, what do we do? And they found this guy. His name is James Fifield. Not my relation. Field, not Fifield. James Fifield, a congregational minister out in the Los Angeles area, who invented a new twist on Christianity. Came out of John Calvin to some extent. John Calvin says, you know you're blessed by God because you're successful. That's how you're going to go to heaven. The rest of us, we're not going to go to heaven. That's the whole idea of predestination, double predestination. But Fifield said, no. Jesus was really about the individual salvation thing. Not about washing somebody else's feet, walking humbly with your God. And I love Micah 6:8, by the way. I'm so glad you have that today. It's not the Beatitudes. Jesus is about, are you saved? Are you saved? We don't know, of course, because it doesn't say. No one knows if they're saved or not. But aside from that, are you saved? Not, have you loved your neighbor? Does that make sense? So we have a new twist, or maybe an updated twist, about what the real story is. Today we have the prosperity gospel that comes out of that. Today we have an awful lot of the evangelical space that comes out of that. I'm not saying they're bad people. I'm saying that the focus is, are you saved? Not, are you building community beyond the walls of your space? Does that make sense? Meanwhile, now moving over to this book here. Meanwhile, World War II. Praise the Lord, pass the ammunition. We win, rah, rah. After the war, the Iron Curtain falls across Europe, right? The other side are those godless pinko communists. I use that word very deliberately, because those communists are godless. And how many of you know that President Eisenhower was an evangelical Christian? And he was the president who helped bring in God we trust as our national motto. One nation under God in our Pledge of Allegiance. Added God to our coins. And welcomed Billy Graham to the White House for the first prayer breakfast. Became an annual tradition for the next 50 years. More. And as we confronted communism, both Russia, Soviet Union, and China, we became much more explicitly, openly Christian as a country. Okay? I did notice that you don't have an American flag in your sanctuary. Don't know when you decided to do that. We do have one still, by the way.
It's in the back.
Oh, it's in the back, okay. I looked at it. I was in the front, you can sort of vaguely see it. So down the corner, it's not there, but yeah. That flag dates from about 1,000 years ago, by the way. During medieval times, the knights would have their flags in the church. And then they became common in the U.S. after the Civil War. So that's not a new thing. I've been wondering about that, whether that was a World War II, Cold War thing, or whether it was older. It is, in fact, older, but still, it's there. But communism was a threat to this country, to these people. No God, communism. And a number of people, I've already mentioned Billy Graham, John Wayne. Let's talk about John Wayne. How many of you remember seeing John Wayne in the movies?
Sure.
There we go.
Sure.
His most famous, actually, he didn't say this, someone else did, the only good Indian is a dead Indian. Sound familiar? John Wayne, who did not serve in the Second World War, the war hero movies over and over and over again. John Wayne personified the strong white male, protecting the innocent, helpless white female from those people. Native Americans, Hispanics, the savages. And the 1950s TV shows, movies, Gunsmoke, I don't remember them anymore, but I saw a few of them here and there. They all have, the white hats have the white skin, and the black hats have other kinds of skin, over and over and over again. And this idea of only I, the strong white male, can save you, the helpless poor Joan, who I know from New Jersey, by the way. She's crashing your party. Got another boost in the 60s and 70s thanks to Jerry Falwell, thanks to Tim LaHaye, Paul Weyrich, some names you may know from various political histories here in this country, who pushing a Spider-Man, sorry, not that, let me scratch that from the thing, but I'll get to that in a moment, who pushing a Jesus who looks more like the Hulk than like the guy who's washing your feet. The power of Jesus. You've heard that, haven't you? Probably in this church. Because Jesus is strong. The power of Jesus. Again, anti-communism. We need to fight off those things that are destroying, that are undermining who we are as Americans. And by the way, the 50s also saw a massive exodus from our cities. How far away from here is Levittown?
Real close.
10
Real
miles?
close. Yeah.
Yeah. There are two of them in the country.
Yep.
The first, planned suburbs. And I love the movie Edward Scissorhands, which captures the mentality of those places in all of their illness. But they are the ideal of the nuclear white family, with the guy who's off to work in the morning and the girl who stays home and touches up her makeup before he comes back so that she always looks her best. Sorry, that face was, oh well, it's also true. But Jesus became this white, this strong protector of America. And not just, not this Middle Eastern Jew who said, you were slaves in Egypt. You need to welcome the stranger. You need to bring in the neighbors and build a new community like God is doing, but here on earth. But this hyper-masculine Jesus has no room for homosexuality. No room for divorce. No room for women leaders, Pastor. No room for wives who refuse sex from their husbands. We are God's chosen people, and strong women, weak men, homosexuality and divorce are brought to us by Satan. We have to get rid of them. So ladies, shut up and do what you're told. And that's what we're seeing, this hyper-patriarchy is coming out of this anti-communist. How do we stay strong in face of this thing? How do we keep on going strong? One additional problem here. I think I can go on? No, not yet. Okay. One additional problem here is that those people, I'll specify who they are in a moment, are undermining America. And let me actually refer to what happened yesterday. Yesterday, Stephen Miller, President Trump's one of his main advisors, spoke of the Haitians in Ohio. Haitian immigrants who are here having fled their own earthquake and other problems here and there, who are many of them hardworking, and they're not legally here in terms of citizens, but they're here under extended armistice or whatever the right words are. I don't have the words in my head. He has said basically they don't belong here. He said that those people are he did not use the word slaves. He used the word the bottom of the pile. They should not be voting, they should not be citizens, they are going to destroy the real America. If you didn't hear that, check out Heather Cox Richardson's post this morning, check out the news. He is targeting people who are not like most of you in the room here, because they don't belong here as real citizens. And on top of that, add one more thing, which goes back to my own Puritan background from Massachusetts, I suppose. Many of us in America, the US, have historically seen ourselves as the heirs to God's promise to Israel. There is a strand of us called Christian Zionism. And this comes to us out of the book of Revelation. Not a book I understand very much of. But that book talks about the end of the world and a new world growing. And many people, many Christians in this country think that we are the ones who will benefit from that new world. But only if we fight off Satan and fight off those people that weaken us. And coming out of that, Pete Hegseth, a name you all know, I suspect. His pastor is a strong believer in what I'm about to show you. That the job of the church is to take over and control all of society. I think I made a mistake here and have to go. No, I don't have to do that. I just need to turn the sound up. I can do that. Do I have time to show a very short video?
Sure.
4 minutes video? Okay. Go back here, go back to slideshow. Oh, don't do that.
It's 10:30.
Okay, to 10:30, then we're okay. This is a gathering in 2022 in Atlanta, Georgia, of faith leaders from the evangelical space. And if it plays right.
All right, go ahead. All right, Dutch leaders, so we'll read it together, okay? As a patriot of faith, I attest my allegiance first and foremost to the kingdom of God and the Great Commission. Secondly, I agree to be a watchman over our nation concerning its people and their rights for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Whereas we, the church, are God's governing body on the earth. Whereas we have been given legal power from heaven and now exercise our authority. Whereas we are God's ambassadors and spokespeople over the earth. Whereas through the power of God, we are the world influencers. Whereas because of our covenant with God, we are equipped and delegated by Him to destroy every attempted advance of the enemy. We make our declarations. We decree that America's executive branch of government will honor God and defend the Constitution.
I'm going to stop here for 2 seconds. I skipped over that. But honor God and defend the Constitution. The Constitution, in this mind, is given to us by God and is as holy as the Bible. Go back. Don't just sit there. Thank you.
That our legislative branch, Congress, will write only laws that are righteous and constitutional. We decree that our judicial system will issue rulings that are biblical and constitutional. We declare that we stand against wokeness, the occult, and every evil attempt against our nation. We declare
So, how many of you heard the seven mountains before? Nobody here? Okay. It is a little mind-blowing. The seven mountains are listed right here on the slide here. The desire is to control ecclesia, which is the old Greek word used for the church. You guys are doing the wrong thing, apparently, according to this anyway. It needs to be controlled by this particular branch of Christianity. The family needs to be rolled back into the traditional male breadwinner, female homemaker, 2.5 children, and a dog, single family house. Forget homosexuality, forget divorce, forget all of the varieties that are out there right now. We need to rebuild that family. Education has to be built on the Bible. And most of you know that the Bible was the most common book around 150 years ago. So when you learned to read and write, you probably did so out of fragments of the Bible. But it needs to get put back in dead center. The government needs to preserve Christian heritage, not this multi-ethnic, multicultural, and then forgetting the fact that Christianity comes in many different flavors. The media has to stop the filth and bring back the Christian worldview. Arts and entertainment. I mean, if you listen to rap music, if you listen to rock music, listen to things like that, you get a bit off color sometimes. You get a little bit not quite to my taste or someone else's taste maybe. Stop the filth. Business needs to put Christian principles first. Hobby Lobby, for example, closed on Sundays. Chick-fil-A, closed on Sundays. Honoring the Sabbath. None of this be available for everybody. I go to a bank where I live, which is closed on Saturdays. You know why? Because the community's Orthodox Jewish. It's their Sabbath. Like, I want the bank open, but it's closed on the Sabbath for them, not for me. So these are the seven mountains, and what we're seeing is an attempt by this organized piece of Christianity to force that onto all of us. I'm going to end with this picture right here. What jumps out at you in this picture right here? Anything interesting? You all know what it is, don't you? It's part of the attack on the Capitol, the peaceful tourists checking out the Capitol. Anything jump out at you? The green flag, yeah. You know what that is? That is, at least maybe, the very first official flag of the U.S. It comes from New Hampshire in 1777. And it says, an appeal to heaven on top of the green evergreen tree. Been picked up by the New Right in the last 10 years. It flies today outside the office of House Speaker Michael Johnson. This is been taken by the right wing in this country as a symbol of the divine control, desire to control everything here in the U.S. Okay? So in conclusion, kind of to wrap things up, to give us time for questions and stuff, let me say two things. One, this isn't new. We've been fighting over Christianity and nationalism for, as I said, 1,700 years. But what we're seeing now, the U.S. was founded explicitly as a non-sectarian space for all of us to choose or not choose our traditions. Most of us were in some way or other Christian way back when, but not all of us. And that word Christian was really fought over. In Virginia, they would cut the tongues out of Baptist preachers in 1775 and afterwards, etc. Puritans drove out Anne Hutchinson in 1638, something like that, and on and on and on. Of course, the KKK was founded not just as an anti-black group, but as anti-Catholic. Those people are destroying the purity of our culture because they're peasants from Ireland and from Italy and from Poland, etc., etc., etc. This is not a new thing, but we were facing it when we thought we were done with it. We're facing it when we thought that we had figured out how to be really multi-ethnic. We had a black president whose father was at least technically Muslim. Yeah, okay, we're fine, but we're not fine. And that's basically what I have to say. What's happening right now is to bring us to a mythical origin story that never was true. But they're trying to make it true now.